So Wylie was the owner, managing director of an organisation called Electronic Scoreboards Australia, ESA. And I've gotten to know a little bit about Wylie as part of the Polaris Centre. He's been a client of the Polaris Centre for about
a decade,
10 years. Almost when he bought ESA, is that right?
Yeah, 2 years after.
2 years after. And I like to talk about Wylie as a Polaris success story because Wylie has done the thing that we really work for in Polaris Business Centre, that somebody starts a business or buys a business, gets it running incredibly well, grows it, and then exits, sells it. And congratulations, Wylie, for do that.
Thank you.
That's a celebration and a success story. So when I heard of that story, I thought it'd be really good to hear from Wylie. Wylie's doing a transition into other things, using what he's learned in his business. And he's certainly got some interesting. Now, Wylie's also old school, so there's no PowerPoint. He's going to do presentation, and we've got the whiteboard out here, which I don't think we've used here for a long time. But it's really interesting to hear the story of a business person that's been through that journey to share those learnings with us as well. So, as always, we promise to bring interesting and a diverse range of speakers, and certainly Wylie is one of those speakers. So, welcome, Wylie, and thank you. And if we're ready to go, we're ready to go.
Thank you, everybody. Good evening. My name's Wylie. One of the things that I want to talk to you about this evening is my journey, a little bit of where I come from, where I've come to, and where I'm going. So it's a perpetual story, and it's likened to what they call the hero's journey. Is anyone familiar with the hero's journey? That philosophy by Joseph Campbell? No? It consists of 3 parts. The initial stage is separation. So that's separation from where you are in life, then to the next phase, which is initiation, and then the third part is return. And that can happen throughout your whole life. And for me, that has happened multiple times in different incarnations in my world. And I have found myself to be able to reinvent myself, recreate, design and develop. And my story starts back when I was a child. I was born and raised on a petrol station. My mum and dad had bought a service station back in the old days, and I was literally thrusted into a world of grease, petrol, fumes, and so forth. And the mechanical world of learning about cars and developing as a youngster, I found myself, in and around a service station that was creative for a child to be able to look at nuts and bolts, screws, and looking at all the different things, mechanical things, how things worked, understanding things from a very early age, how to use spanners, screwdrivers, tools and the like. And my parents were both entrepreneurs, so I always knew them as just business owners themselves, so they never worked for anybody else. And during that time, as a little tacker, I basically spent time, looking at my dad building cars, repairing cars, servicing cars, operating a service station. It gave me a good insight into the big world of electronics, electrical, mechanical, and that was the 70s. So electronics, as I say that loosely, was pretty light on back in those days, large transistors and things like that in push button radios and 8-track stereos in cars. And it was interesting to, hear that sort of stuff, and was like amazing for me. I'm 53, so I was born in 1970, just to give you a bit of perspective on my timeline. So during the course of the 70s, I grew up learning a little bit about that sort of stuff. My grandfather was a tool maker, so he was exposing me to things like lathes, milling machines, drill presses, and all sorts of technical things, measurements. I actually got to learn imperial, which was, I think, a blessing for myself. A lot of kids in my age have no idea about imperial. What's 1/8 drill bit? What does that mean? What's a 3/16? What on earth is that? So for me, I was very lucky to be able to know what a 1/4 inch drill bit is, a 6.5, and those sort of things. So I was very blessed having my parents, and the age that I grew up in and the era I grew up, there was a lot of transitional information. My uncle was an electrician, my other uncle was an auto electrician. So I had the ability to grow up and learn in an environment that was very hands-on, very tactile, and very exploratory information. I was always encouraged to get involved, into the fact workshop, fact finding and delving into things. So it was great for me as an individual, and my brother was the same. My brother's 2 years younger, and we were experiencing things, and our hands-on, learning how to cut, screw, glue, paint. My parents were mad renovators, so we renovated several houses. So if there was a wall there, my mum wanted a door, and if there was a window there, she wanted to close it in, So, and the paint had to be changed completely. And then she was she was from England, she loved wallpaper, so every room in the house had to get wallpapered. My dad hated it, but my mum, she loved it. So it was one of those interesting things that you grow up with these things, and I thought every household had wallpaper in it. Turns out it doesn't. So yeah, it was an interesting experience as growing up through the 70s. I remember very distinctly, I think I was about 5 or 6 years old, and I had one of those 3-in-1 stereo systems. And it was one of those, tape player in the front, radio on the top, and stereo. And I was playing with it in my bedroom, and I must have been around about 6 years old, and I'm looking at it, and I've unscrewed the back of it, turned it upside down, and I'm playing around, and I'm like, oh yeah, well, oh yeah, wow. What does that do? The motor, and there's a wire. Hang on, where does that wire go? Oh, that goes in the PowerPoint. I better unplug that. So my first electric shock came at around the age of 6. I didn't tell my parents, and I still haven't told them, so please. This not going to go too far, I hope, this video. So yes, it was my first experience in electricity, and I think I've been addicted to it ever since. So anything that's had electrons flowing through it, I've had a passion for it, and a design and a desire to experiment with it, learn with it, grow with it. If I couldn't fix it, I would mess it up. I'll be politically correct and not say anything naughty. So I learned a lot of reverse engineering. So I'd pull things apart to try and see how they worked, how they create, what created that function, or how did that get from there to there. So as inventors, you have a bit of an understanding around black box theory, input and output. I like the black box. I like to know what was in there and how it worked and what created it. Magnetic tape. I was fascinated with the fact that you could have this tape, and just depending on which way the magnetic information was on there, and you could store music on it, and like how incredible. And then later on in the 80s, it was storing data on it, and the tape got wider and faster, and the mechanisms changed, as you're all aware. So I was able to learn a lot from a very, very early age in my growing up. So I suppose for me, a lot of my benefits in my world is that I got to learn at that young age. So I've been able to pass that information on throughout my career in other aspects and iterations as a trainer, a mentor. But I always believe in one hand up, one hand down. So for me, I've always been looking, always wanting to learn and grow, but at the same time passing it on throughout my career. I've been I've had apprentices, and I've taught and trained, and I've had an opportunity to be able to support and educate and bring things to to other people. And I think that's where, like mentioned earlier by Sasha, for myself, being involved in the Polaris Centre has been a great opportunity for the last 10 years. Having the mentorship there, teaching and educating in the business space has been a great opportunity for me. A bit more about that later. So back to my story in the timeline. And in the 80s, I started playing around with computers, early days, TRS 80s, VIC 20s, Amiga computers. So all of that sort of, early technology, tape data, and then, that big floppy disk thing, sort of experimenting with that. Had lots of Dick Smith kits, spent a lot of time in Tandies and getting components and wiring this up and designing that and creating this, working with audio, did a bit of DJing in my time, created a range of DJ information and equipment and integration with sound and lights, and used a lot of that. In my high school, electronics came in just at the very end in my latter years, and it was really interesting because I actually knew more about electronics than the teacher did, so that was really fascinating. But I'd been doing it for, I don't know, at that stage 10 years solidly, whereas he'd been doing it for like 10 months. So was a bit of a disadvantage, even though he had a teaching degree. But we had a great time and we learned a lot back then. And I suppose from there, I was fortunate enough after finishing year 12 to get an electronic apprenticeship. So I went and worked for Oliver J. Nielsen, or Nielsen Electric as they're known nowadays, out at Regency Road. And I had an opportunity to work in their what was called the brown goods department, which is typically electronic stereos, TVs, videos, DVDs, and those sort of things. So I got an apprenticeship, which was pretty rare back in those days. I was lucky I did work experience through my community school outreach program. So I was able to do some work experience there. And when I did the work experience, I got an opportunity to show my skills and abilities to the technician, and he was very fascinated with my abilities. He got me things every time I would come there once a week. He'd be like, "Can you fix this Walkman? Can you fix this stereo? Can you fix this?" And I would fix them, and he's just like, "Who is this guy? Where do you come from?" So I told him that bit of my story, and then he mentioned me a bit more to the manager, and I kept coming back, and then he gave me an opportunity to take an apprenticeship on. So I passed my probation after 3 months, and I was fixing things straight out of the gate. So for them, it was a very good economical return on their investment as an apprentice. And then I grew and I learnt. And so I fixed televisions, videos, TVs from all different nationalities, all different countries. Some of the local things that were made in Philips down at Hendon, all the way to the Chryslers, the Sonys and the Japanese technology, the Blaupunks that would come out of Germany. So a whole range of different technology. VHS and beta, and beta's still a better format. I don't care what anyone says. VHS, yes, it got the commercial exposure, but the beta was still a much better product. So yeah, it was interesting learning all those sort of things. And during the course of that, I had the opportunity to do nurse call systems, which I'm not sure if you were familiar. You get the button, calls the nurse, and have the door light above the person's room, and then a little annunciator saying room 103 needs some attention. So in hospitals and nursing homes and so forth. So I got to spread my wings out in the larger community and work on those sort of systems. Got to delve and design a little bit of new technology there, which was quite exciting. Did circuit boards. And then I was also experimenting with fire alarm systems. So I started working with fire alarm systems and fire evacuation systems, which are all in the shopping centres and hotels and motels and all of that sort of stuff, which is everywhere now. Every multi-storey building has to have one by law and by regulation. So I had a really good opportunity, a very broad scope during my electronic apprenticeship. And then I was also working with electricians at the time. So we would go out and do jobs and learn on the job for different technologies. And then I started doing things and they would just sit there and watch me work. And I'm like, this is a bit unfair. How is it that you're sitting here? And it's like, well, they need to be there because they need to be a licensed electrician. And I needed a licensed electrician to supervise the work because there was integration between electronics and electrical. So I then started going, there's an opportunity here. So I approached, as I was coming out of my first apprenticeship, I approached the manager and asked if I could do a second apprenticeship as an adult, and then became an electrician. So I took on the opportunity to become an electrician as well. So then I started learning. I was doing integration with PLCs. It was early days of PLCs and robotics and hydraulics and pneumatic integration. It gave me the opportunity building management systems, air conditioning control, plant and equipment, fire integration. So I had a very broad range of stuff, and that was early days of sort of microcomputers and things like that. So I was very blessed at that time that I came through, and in my 2 apprenticeships it was a lot of new technologies and a lot of emerging things that helped me grow and develop. And I was able to, soak it up very quickly, having trade school at the same time for my second apprenticeship, and then having electronics behind me. It's the difference between, I suppose, practical knowledge versus pure theory. So I was able to really integrate. And I got asked a while ago, what's the difference between an electronic technician and an electrician? Does anyone know what that is? Yep, that's definitely the key legal marker, yes. One deals in power distribution and the other one deals in electronic communication. Because electronics pretty much is communication of some sort or another, whether you're talking about sending information via a visual mechanism, whether it's by an audio mechanism. Electronics is communication and electrical is power. So there's sort of a separation, even though they both have electrons, and the voltage is definitely much different, having my fair share of zip zaps and stuff. I find that having those two side by side has given me a great opportunity and throughout my life to be able to explore and experiment with a range of different things. So as I progressed through my career, I got to the end of my apprenticeship and there was a change of management inside the organisation and they were heading in a completely different direction to what I wanted to. So I jumped out of there and went over to the South Australian Gas Company and spent a whole lot of time in there learning about remote data loggers and remote communication. So they were extracting all the information from large suppliers as well as the pipeline information. So we were talking about, data transfer over radio, data transfer over phone lines, and telemetry as a range of different information to support the accumulation and the distribution of gas inside South Australia. I'm not sure if you know, but gas comes in a pack. So they send gas from up at the gas fields and they compress it and then they send it through and then it decompresses as it comes closer to the distribution point, and then it goes through large regulation stations that then puts it down to a really, really low PSI that is then comes through gas burners. And we're also part of the odorant service, so we would put odorant gas into make the gas smell, because natural gas has no smell whatsoever. And I accidentally got some of that on my hand and I stunk for a week like I was a gas leak. It was the most terrible thing in the world. Normally you wear gloves, and I don't know how, but I got some on my hand, and everywhere I went for a week, everyone's going, "There's a gas leak, there's a gas leak." And it's not, that's me. I'm the gas leak. So it was a challenging business to be in. I learned very quickly, you just wear long gloves and stay away from that stuff. So yes, but it's an amazing service that they offer and what they bring to us. Natural gas is an incredible product. Its energy and its efficiency and its cleanliness. So I was very grateful to be part of the electronics department and the telemetry and computerization department. It gave me a big scope on how to do broad scale communication, wide ranging, different versions, different opportunities, and learned a lot more about communication styles. I mean, I was familiar with RS-232, but it gave me a little bit more information on RS-485, USB interfacing. It was back in the days of Windows 3.1, 3.11, and I think it was just before Windows 95, around that area. So we were collecting data and doing it, starting out in DOS and then started progressing it into more, integrated style of usable, spreadsheetable things like that, rather than just raw DOS, which is very boring and slow and hard to program. So Windows is getting there. So I suppose that was the big change. And then there was, again, another change in management. They'd had a buyout, Boral took them over, and the merge and purge model came in. And it was the Razor Gang came in and started chopping up jobs and chopping up services and trimming the fat as they come and do. And I found myself in a position where I'm going, I'm going to look for something before it happens to me. So I then ventured off into the security industry. I worked for Wormwood Security, Chubb Security, Independent Security, ADT Security. There was another merge and purge there, which I then learned a whole range of new technology in the security space. So I had experience with video and television. So I then had an opportunity to look at CCTV, access control, and technologies then that were multiple centers. So I worked for government, I worked for semi-government, I worked for defence, and I worked in a whole range of different spaces that allowed me a whole range of privileges that I would never have had any other time. Worked in the financial sector. I actually stood in a bank with millions of dollars and was like, and there's just millions and millions of dollars, and it's just like, I wonder how much I could stick that in a bag and take that with me, and how far would I get? But no, unfortunately I didn't do that, because you can't get enough and you can't go far enough with that. But seeing that as an opportunity, I grew in that space quite a lot. So I started out as a technician, then I became a team leader, I became an educator within the different organisations that I was in, and then became a manager in a couple of them, giving opportunity to teach and train and educate, support, learn about more about different speeds of communication. Fibre optics was just coming in. We had large scale sites that we looked at, which was the University of South Australia. So we had WANs that we set up between those that were monitoring all the campus communication with all the access control, so students could travel between different campuses with one access control card, which previously was unheard of. Usually you had one access control card per site. Then you go to another site, you had to have another access control card. So this was back in the mag stripe days. So you still have the little magnetic card like what's on your I think they're still on the cards nowadays. Not that many people use them, but they're all PayWave now. And then it moved over to proximity technology, which is what you use now in our commercial sense with the PayWave. So I learned a lot about proximity technology and how that works. You know, when you basically apply a card with a coil, and then there's a micro transducer in there that picks up the capacitive effect, charges it up, and then discharges back its information with its ID and its encryption, all done in the space of about 1 to 2 seconds. So what we take for granted now with our phones and with our cards, you know, I was playing with back in the 90s, which was an amazing technology to be looking in the defence and in the commercial space. I looked after all of the police security in South Australia, had all of their systems all online. I basically maintained all of their processes and procedures, and looked after all the police stations and all the integration, and kept that up to great. Also with their comm centre, which is in Victoria Square, I maintained and looked after all their video cameras and links that were all part and parcel of what's in now Hindley Street and Rundle Mall. So all those pan, tilt, zoom, PTZ cameras that basically maintain and watch and keep an eye on us as we're walking around. I was all involved in those processes. So I've learned a lot of information, a lot of technology, and I suppose that was, again, another fantastic opportunity for me throughout those different organisations that I worked with. And then finally I ended up in the Adelaide Airport, and looking after the Adelaide Airport as the electronic security manager and building manager, and basically maintaining that whole entire organisation and site, which was quite a very stressful thing to do. So I climbed to the top of the tree, and I was looking out over the view, and I'd been there for a while, and you know, dealing with federal police, customs, you know, people doing silly things. It's like, have you not watched Airport Security or those programs on TV? Do you not realise you're being watched all the time? You know, it's like, you're not going to get away with it. Don't try it, you know. And, you know, custom guys are walking around, they've got their dogs, and it's, you know, it's an exciting environment to be in, but it's also very stressful. And I was married to the job 24/7, and it was a very challenging time for me. So I started thinking, you know, I want to get back into a space where I can do something, I can create something, I can, you know, be the cause and effect of my own journey, my own destination. And so anyway, this opportunity appeared out of nowhere. The gentleman who I bought the business off was buying plastic screens off of my father, and he ran a plastic business called Adelaide Plastics at the time. And he rang me up, and I was at work, and he said, oh, this guy wants to sell this electronic business, you know, you might be interested in it. And I'm like, yeah, no, Dad, I don't know anything about scoreboards. You know us, we don't play sports. We ride motorbikes, we drive cars, you know. You've got a Stingray Corvette, you know. We're petrol heads, you know. We don't play sport. You've never played football or cricket with me. Where are you going with this? Anyway, I said, no, don't worry about it, that's fine. Anyway, I had the 2 worst weeks of my life there, was just problem after problem after problem. I went, you know what, I might give this guy a call. So anyway, I rang him up, had a chat with him on the phone. We got on really well, and he said, look, Sunday night, come to my house, my wife will cook you dinner, and we'll talk over, you'll talk in my study, I'll show you some of my designs, I'll show you some of my technology, I'll show you some of my clients, and I'll show you, all right, okay, you talked me into it, so who gives a free meal, you know, let's give it a go. So I drove to his house, got there about 6 o'clock. We spent about an hour chatting, and he's showing me circuit boards and digit boards and designs and consoles and controllers. And I'm like, I'm just fascinated. It's like I'm back in my element, back in the tinkering, back in the technology. And I'm like, oh, resistors, capacitors, microprocessors, RS485, my friends, I love you. And I'm like, oh, yes, familiar environment, yay. And I was like, yes. So the next thing, his wife, Margaret, says, come on, let's dinner time, boys. Come stop playing, come on. So she drags us into the dining room, and we have a bit of a chat, and we have a beautiful meal. And then after that, we sat down and we chatted a bit more, and showed me some of his different sites that he'd done all around Australia, and big scoreboards and big jobs in community centres and universities and a whole range of different places all around the country. And I was just like, this is amazing. I mean, this is incredible. This guy's like a little Einstein, you know. He's just been busy beavering away since the early 80s, just making thousands of these things. And I'm like, this is fantastic. So I'm going, how am I going to make this work? Anyway, midnight comes around, I'm going, I've got to go home, I've got to go to work, I've got to get to work in the morning. So anyway, I'm driving down the hills from his place, I'm going, I don't know how it's going to happen, but I'm going to buy that business. I think that business is right for me. And I was like, okay, I don't know what I'm going to do. So I got my accountant to do the due diligence. So I started looking into finances, and I just couldn't manage to get the finances that he wanted for it. Anyway, I rang him up a couple of weeks later, and I said, look, love the business, love the idea, love the concept. You know, I'm really fascinated with the technology, and I really think we could get on and work well together. But unfortunately, I just can't seem to finance it. And he said, look, that's okay. You know, leave it with me. But no, we'll talk again. All right, no worries. So a couple of weeks later, he rings me up and says, I got a deal for you. And I'm like, really? I was like, well, yeah, what? He goes, I'll vendor finance you. I was blown away. I just couldn't believe it. This guy's actually going to take the risk on me. And I'm like, this is amazing. So I went up, had another meal. Those meals, I tell you what, his wife's a great cook. So I was like, all right, let's give it a go. So we went up there, we negotiated the terms and conditions, and I asked how long he could stick around for to help me transition and learn and grow with the technology. And he said, look, you know, I'll give you 6 to 12 months. And I said, yeah, that's great. No worries. I'm sure I can do that. We worked out a payment plan, and I was like, we signed a contract, and that was 12 years later. So during that time, that 12 years, he's been with me the whole time. He's never left my side. He wanted to retire. You're never going to retire when you play with this stuff, I learned. It's too much fun. You're not really working, you're inventing, you're creating, you're doing the things that you love. And that's what I thought, you know. And he's been my mentor. So I've had him as my mentor for the 12 years. And he's like a best friend, a father figure. And he's a great attribute to me and to my life. And just, I've been so blessed to have somebody like that in my world. So throughout that time, we have created and invented so many things together. He's like the Steve Wozniak, and I'm the Steve Jobs of the business. So I create ideas. I've thought about things, and together we brainstorm them and design and develop and work together as a team. And he's just been there as my technical guy. You know, I've created, you know, different ideas, different software, different hardware, different concepts, and I'll share a few of those with you tonight. One of the big ones that I'd like to share with you is the UI. Now, I'm not sure if you all read my little blurb that I sent to Sasha that I put in the little spiel. The UI is one of the biggest things. The user interface is one of the biggest things that in the sporting industry, and I think in the world now, is one of the biggest challenges, but the biggest reward. Now, have you all got smartphones? Yep. So the user interface is the biggest thing that you interact with that device. And then that device allows you to access everything beyond that. One of the things when I took over the business, the user interface was okay, and it was good and worked all right, but I could see that there was plenty of room for improvement. So it started out as a little console case with a 2-line LCD alphanumeric display with a green backlit, little dot matrix, you know, I'm sure you're all familiar with that. Made some projects, I've seen some of them, and it had a little touch membrane screen. Did a great job. We were able to do multiple sports, cricket, basketball, football, and play a whole range of different things through it, through different software. We used a Mega 32 Atmel chip processor and run that as this primary software, and use RS485 as the primary mode of communication up to the scoreboards. And then we also use wireless more and more as I owned the business. So we had this beautiful interface, and I could see that the challenging part was the rules were changing, colors were changing, formats were changing. And this device meant every time we had one of those, we'd have to change the decal on the front. We'd have to change the hardware and all that sort of stuff. And I already had a smartphone. I'm going, well, we've got to do this in this business. We've got to create this to give us the opportunity to have, you know, our own user interface. And now I looked into doing it on a tablet, and the cost of, you know, making an app and all that sort of stuff is huge. And unless you've got a huge, you know, selling audience that you're selling to, you know, getting your $2 or $3 each time you sell it to millions of people, it's not practical. So we started designing and developing. We started out with a 7-inch touchscreen. We ended up with a 9-inch touchscreen, giving us full capacitive, for a resistive screen technology. So we basically could then touch the screen, which was more of a fixed contact, because people are a bit more tactile in the sporting industry. They're also a little bit rougher in the sporting industry. They tend to have a bit more rough and tumble, but it gave us the opportunity to then have changing of screens for changing of different games. And if the rules changed, we could change the timing, we could change the colors, we could change the keys, we could change the layout. So we then developed developed that some seven and a half years ago, and then we kept refining it and defining it and defining it and defining it, giving it more user-friendly features, quicker startup. The app started running faster, the microprocessors were running faster, and just the product that I sold in April to the new owner, who's now moved to Victoria with the product. It's world class. So it's literally competing with the likes of America and Europe. And we had an audience in the local mums and dads. We've got the national and state leagues that play in it. We've also got the NBL who use this product, and also the Commonwealth Games back in 2018. So a huge audience and a whole range of people. So the user interface has created the opportunity for people to use it at all different levels, and depending on the style of person and the people, we can make the characters bigger, we can change the colors, because as you all know, left brain people are all data and numbers and letters, whereas right brain people are colors. So we tried to combine the two of them so that it would help people to be able to use the user interface at that level. So it gives them the opportunity to be able to play and quickly ascertain, because sometimes mums and dads have never seen this stuff before, get chucked in the hot seat, you're scoring for little Johnny and David tonight, and they look at it and go, oh, what do I do? And there's score for team A, score for team B, start, stop, reset, siren, and away you go. So it wasn't rocket science. They didn't have to start up a computer and go into a program and load it up and then navigate it. It was literally right in front of them, very easy for them to understand. Part of our uniqueness of our product was that it was easy to understand. Our competitors, I looked at in Australia and overseas, it was super complicated. And I wanted to have something that, I'm not a huge sporting person. So for me, it's like I wanted to make sure that if I can use it and other people who could just literally put it in front of them, they could literally operate that device and give them the opportunity to just be able to hit the ground running and just be able to score any game at any place. But also at the same time, have the high end, the high league, your national level stuff, to be able to do all the facilities, all the preciseness, all the timing, all the regulatory things that could be integrated into that user interface. So over that time, we've developed that into a point now where the next part of that was everything had a cord, everything had a cable. And I was like, we need to change this. So he started developing in the sort of earlier days, before I took the business on, over to 2.4 gig wireless. So that 2.4 gig wireless was using XB radios. Is anyone familiar with the XB, little matchbox XB radios? No? So it's a little small, about the size of a matchbox, a very small, thin platform, multi-pin, 2.4 gig, and it basically does short-range peer-to-peer, or you can mesh them. So you could have one here and have 4 or 5 in different locations, and then they can cross-communicate to each other. So that technology gave us the opportunity we just use the peer-to-peer function, but as I took over the business and moved through the space, the 2.4 gig band just got more and more cluttered. Everyone's on Bluetooth, everyone's on Wi-Fi, everyone's updating their status. That network just that whole 2.4 gig is just crashed out. So about 3.5 years ago, we started getting the occasional problem with radio links between a scoreboard, and we're only talking 25, 30 meters. These things are rated at 1 kilometer. We weren't getting 100 meters. Then it started coming down to 25 meters. So the console was in the middle of a basketball court, 25 meters to either end, and we weren't getting the signal through. We were getting intermittency. It became a real problem. I remember getting a call from one of our clients. He was in Illawarra. And he said to me, I've got 3 courts and they're all working fine until a couple of weeks ago. Court number 3, it's just dropping out, it's not working, nothing's happening, everything's... I said, what have you done? Have you put a new Wi-Fi node in? No. Have you, is this any particular day? He said, no, it can happen random times. I said, okay. And so you've got 2.4 gig radio. I said, is there a mobile phone tower? He said, no. I said, anything changed in the buildings around the outside? Yeah, the Australian Defence Force moved in next door and put up about 40 aerials. I went, yeah, that might have something to do with it. And I was like, he said to me, yeah, it's like a bit of a crown of thorns up there, So the defence guys had just moved in and just wiped his radio stuff out. So I said, that's it. We're gonna change our frequency. So I did a lot of experimenting and looking around the bands, and I saw this space in the 900 meg band that didn't have to be licensed, low milliwatt output. I thought, this is good. So Brent and I did some research. We walked through the idea and concepts, design and develop. And so we then implemented, got some modules and created some different things. And then from there, we went, this is the space. So we're going to change our whole design, get away from the other company's product, but we're going to use the same footprint. So we're going to be able to, so we can just retrofit the existing products that we've got out there, take the socket and then just socket in a new radio in the 900 meg band. So we became it retrofittable because again, I was more all about repairing, replacing, keeping. I'm not into planned obsolescence. I don't want things just to be thrown away and just, sorry, that's, you got to buy a brand new one. So they could send it back to us, we could upgrade it and we could change it and keep the technology going. So that was very well received. We launched that product about 2.5 years ago, and it went great. So we've now got that as the primary form of communication, and then the new product range that we developed has then been converted over to 900 meg radio. So everything that goes out is now 900 meg radio, and we don't do wired anymore. So that's the whole wired thing, because the problem what's happening is people putting in scoreboards either into existing locations or into brand new locations, whether it's indoor or outdoor. The biggest cost was running cables. The labor and the copper that was running the cables was too expensive. So having a wireless option gave us such a unique situation that was instant. It was plug and play. They could plug it into a PowerPoint at the scoreboard, plug it into a PowerPoint, or have a battery pack at the scorer's location, and then they could communicate backwards and forwards. So that was one of the big things for me, is communication. I learned a lot about RF communication in our R&D department, with the different styles of antennas, the different wavelengths, we used a range of encryption as well. So we encrypted the product so that it couldn't be hacked, because at the national level, so you can imagine if someone, missed a score or missed a second or something on the clock, you can start quite a large problem with some of these radical, fanatical type sports people. So I didn't want to upset the natives, because they get a bit restless when that happens. So it was an interesting opportunity for us, because it gave us the new edge. So our user interface then got an upgrade with its communication style. So we were then in a really unique place that gave us the opportunity for us to communicate better. The user interface became better. And so that really became the next generation. And then, as you would see over the last 5 to 10 years, video screens and advertisement screens are everywhere. Sporting venues, service stations, side of the road, video screens, and that technology has really come a long way. And I think someone in this organisation shared things about blue LEDs a little while ago. And that was the big change for the industry when that happened many years ago, that the technology for blue LEDs has become so good now, because the blue output was never as good as the other outputs, but now they've been able to modulate it up enough that they can get enough output out of blue. So these video screens now are cheap and affordable, which they weren't 10 years ago. So video screen technology with the 3-color LED has now become the thing. So I could see that being an emerging change in my industry. So we decided that we needed to look at, instead of building the physical circuit boards and the digit boards that we had been making, we were looking at having another form of communication and technology, which was to use what we called our SVI, our scoreboard video interface. So allowed our new user interface with our wireless radio to then communicate with that technology to a scoreboard video interface, which was based on a Windows platform that used a Windows graphical user interface, so that we could throw up in a whole range of different formats. So that could then be scaled on whether it's a small screen of this caliber or a screen of this size, or even one in a massive sporting venue like the MCG or places like that. So that then was our next project. So we designed and developed a software to then be able to give it the ability to be scalable, colors, different fonts, and all designed and developed here in South Australia by myself and the team. Brenton was the lead on it, but there were other people involved in that project as well. So those 3 major areas of design and development and implementation were part of my hero's journey. So I separated from what I was familiar with, which was the security environment and the involvement in that industry, which I'd become an expert in my field and had climbed to the top of the ladder, but I decided to jump out of that. And then I went into the initiation phase. So in the beginning and the middle of that business, I was in the initiation phase, learning the technology, learning the rules of the game, playing the rules of the game. and then the return has been the last couple of years where now I've mastered the craft and then given the ability to now sell the business onto somebody else because it's systemized enough, organized, proprietary technology. I've managed to copyright some things. We've in the process of patenting some technology. So those things are now in the hands of somebody else, and I was able to pass those things on. So has anyone here you're all inventors, am I right? Everyone's an inventor? Has everyone invented something? Would be inventors. I like it. Well, that's how I started out. So to me, that invention, that inventive, creative side of us is what's really, really important. So I think we're South Australia. I learned a few things tonight from Sasha about some inventions from Mr. Vagola and a few other things, and I just realised there's so much going on here in South Australia. So much inventing and creating. Every possibility, every idea, there's an opportunity. So for me, what I want to help and explain and explore with you is, what's your user interface? Your user interface is you. So one of the things I want to talk to you quickly about is how I came across, back when I was 23, I did my first personal development workshop, and it changed my life completely. And one of the big thing that I learned from that was a process which is developed by Professor Marsden and his wife, who is the inventor of the lie detector. This process is a simple process, and it consists of knowing you and getting to know you. So I'm going to ask you a series of questions and be really, really, really honest with yourself. And I want you to think about what I'm about to ask you. So there's a circle. That circle's cut into half and cut into half again. So are you an extrovert, or are you an introvert? Are you task orientated, or are you people orientated? So we have DISC, DISC. So this process is about getting to know you and your user interface. Because at the end of the day, how you interact with yourself and with others is your user interface. And that is really, really important. I did this when I was 22 years old, when I first started and learnt this process. It changed the way I thought. Because to me, I wanted to know how I interact with my world. So, anyone want to volunteer that I can have a chat with and just interact with? Yep, terrific. Let's go. Thank you. What was your name? Shane? Wylie. So are you an extrovert or are you an introvert?
Well, probably more of an extrovert.
Okay.
I'm more of an introvert.
Okay. So let's talk about you for the moment. Let's just play with Shane for a sec. So you're an extrovert. Now, would you say you're task orientated or people orientated? So you're task orientated and you're an extrovert. So that puts you in the D category. So can I ask what you do?
I work in electronic countermeasures for defence science technology group.
Terrific. And you're a manager?
Now, basically, I'm in defence, so we deal with counter IDs and take drawings out of the sky.
Yes.
We do the test and evaluation.
So you're a technician?
No, I'm basically one of the EMP technicians, like explosive ordnance.
Yes.
So we're the ones that bomb explosive defusing, put jammers and
Yes.
make that.
Terrific. So you've in your role, you are primarily an extrovert person, and you're also task orientated. So D, you're in that what they call the dominance. So you take charge in your situations.
You take charge of the situation, but because we work in a very like a regulatory authority, like engineering authority, we have certain steps we have to meet. It's like getting an airplane in the sky.
Mm-hmm.
To make sure all the mechanics are correct.
Yes.
The pilot gets in.
Yes.
And if we have like a chief engineer that comes over to make sure all the work is proofed and done correctly.
Yes.
So when you're actually doing that, you work with like introverts, you have technical knowledge, certain topics, so you don't need to read subject matter on everything.
Yes.
And so when you work with them, then you sort of become part of that introvert environment.
Yep.
So it's in between you both.
Yep. So you're an interface.
Yeah.
So this is your UI, so your user interface. You're interfacing with a range of technical people, and you're then providing an outcome so that there is a go or a no-go situation for the process that needs to take place.
We do a lot of the risk
Mhm.
14-month employees overseas.
Yes.
That risk management process, which we test and evaluate, they use that data to make informed decisions for people to keep safe.
Fantastic. Excellent. Thank you. Appreciate that. So listening to you, it sounds like you're in exactly the right place in your professional career to help integrate between the certain technical aspects, but also, making decisions, which is what a D type personality does. And it's performing that task is where we end up going. Excuse me. Thank you very much, Shane. Anyone else want to share something? Anyone else? Okay. All right. Well, I'll talk about myself then. When I first did this back when I was 23, I was an S. And that was because of the career I was in. I was an apprentice. I was 23 years of age, living at home, doing my second apprenticeship. So I was an introvert. I was very technically orientated and electronics and that sort of stuff, but I was also people orientated. So I would go out on site, visit people, repair electronic equipment, whether it's fire alarms, whether it was nurse call systems. I had the opportunity to work with people, but I was also in that introvert space of technology. My father, on the other hand, is a C. So he's an introvert and he's task orientated. So he's a motor mechanic by trade, very precise, analytical, mechanical. My mum is the complete opposite. My mum is an extrovert and a people orientated person. She was the ultimate saleswoman. She would sell ice to Eskimos, and even then she'd put icing on top just because she liked them. So she was one of those people that was just the life of the party, and yet my father was the quiet, small, tall, dark and handsome, quiet guy. So they were completely opposite people, but they got on like a house on fire. Yeah, Dad was the house and Mum was the fire, So one of the things that I'd like to share with you is have a look online at the disc profile. You can go into a bit more detail in the Q&A if you want, but I just wanted to brief this and give you a bit of information around your own UI, your own user interface, because if you can work out whether you're an extrovert or an introvert, whether you're task orientated or people orientated, you can then integrate with your relationships with your friends, family and loved ones. You can also do that in your professional career, so that when you come across somebody and you meet them for the first time, are they an extrovert or are they an introvert? That's the first one you can ask yourself. Is this person loud and gregarious and big and wow, or are they kind of quiet and back a little bit and talk? Yep. Okay. Yep.
Some of us are mixtures of both.
Yep. You can be. That's right.
You get people that are extremes of one and up, by divorce.
Yep.
Some of us are mixtures of both.
And people change.
Task and people, depending on the situation.
That's right. And people change from their home life to their work life. I know people that in their home life, the man wears the pants or the woman wears the pants, but when they go to work, it's the complete opposite. So they have these complete flip type personalities. So it's a science that was developed, and it's still being developed by a range of different organizations. It's not patented. It's an international standard that a range of different companies have access to. So you can look it up. It's fantastic stuff. I won't go into too much because we don't have the time for it, but it's just something I'd love to share with you because of the amount of information that it helped me with and I learned. So now I'm up in the D category, predominantly when I'm at work, but I'm also in the I because I do sales. So when I was running and operating the business, I was spending time being the leader, the director, the controller, and then at the same time I was also the I when I was dealing with my staff, dealing with the sales, making sure that things were train, all those sort of things. So I would sort of sway between here, and that's also what happens is sometimes you'll find people that they're people orientated, but sometimes they're more an extrovert, an influencer. Sometimes they're a bit more of the S, the steady, the quieter type. So you can have those kind of areas where you can move a little bit. And then there are some people that are more into the center. So they're a bit more of a balance of things, which is what you were mentioning there. So you can have a variety of aspects. And this process can be actually looked at from a range of different things. But it's one of those things that takes a fair bit of time to talk about, and you can look online and you can have check that out and do your own research. I just found it fascinating, and I wanted to share it with as many people as I can while I'm around, because to me it's one of those things that it's helped develop me as a person and my user interface, so that when I'm integrating and talking with people, I'm not loud and crazy in a quiet space, but I'm not quiet and meek and mild in a loud crazy space. I find my balance just depending on my environment, and we're all individuals, but at the same time we're all the same. Yes.
From your experience and knowledge, I think considering this for looking at this for many years, so the super successful people that just come home, you know, take up the ball and pop the balls, they tend to be the extrovert D's, right?
Correct.
The people that are a bit of a mixture of all, they don't seem to have that, from my understanding, from my observation, they sort of have a different level of success. They have fast success, some big success, but it seems to be that ED type that is the super successful one, as opposed to the more the people. I mean, you can get people,
Yes.
salespeople. They've
Yes.
successful in themselves,
Mm-hmm.
but it's that mixture of it's that mixture between people and tasks. They're sort of floating between the two, and they don't really get that super success like the others do.
Mm-hmm.
From my
Yes. So in this side here on the task orientation, so this side, the C, is more detail orientated. So that person's going to be a lot more into the detail, into the depth, which is what Shane was talking about, some of the people that he has to deal with. But then when you've got the D, that's more of the overview of the detail. So the big picture, the collating of information and the creating and looking at how I'm going to go, where I'm going to go, what I'm going to do. So that person there often is the success, but it's his team that actually makes him successful. On his own, he's no good. Trust me, I tried to do it on my own. It didn't work. So I got my team. I built a team around me, and I built a team with some C's. I had one S, and I was a bit more of the I, but then some of them were a combination of those particular roles. So having a combination in your organization is definitely a big part of it, but also with yourself, finding those things where you can then adjust your behavior based on the task you're doing at home. So if you're creating and then designing and developing, you need to be detail orientated. You need to look at, what it is, but at the same time, you've still got to have the vision, and you've still got to have the overview of what a D has to go, where am I going with this? What am I doing with this? What problem is this going to solve? How is this going to benefit me? How's it going to benefit humanity? Why am I doing this? And why is the big question? Have you all heard of Simon Sinek? Yeah. Sinek. Simon Sinek. He talks about why. And when I saw that video some 12 years ago when he just brought it out, 20 years ago when he just brought it out through David Griggs, which Sasha knows, he put me onto that, and I saw a thing that I'd never seen before. Why, how, what? Look up Simon Sinek, look at his little TED talk. It's old and in his early days, but it still has an amazing impact on why do you do something? Why do you get out of bed? Why do you create, why are you creating this invention? What is it? What's in it for me? Why am I doing this? Is it for me or is it for somebody else? Because at the end of the day, the how and the what will take care of themselves. How you build it and what you build will take care of itself. If you've got the why sorted out, if you know why you're doing something, why you're making your bed, why you're cleaning the car, why you're making breakfast. Well, why you're making breakfast is because you need to eat, you need energy, and you need to go. So what's the why behind your creation? What's the why behind your invention? If you have the why, you have the passion. And passion is enthusiasm. And if you have the enthusiasm on the inside, then that will grow. And I explain it as in there's motivation and there's enthusiasm. Motivation is having a coach screaming at you at the sidelines going, you've got to work faster, you've got to run harder, you've got to kick that ball. Whereas if you've got the inspiration is, I can't remember the exact, but it's internal inspiration. It's about your inspiration from within, from who you are. So it's your internal inspiration. So what inspires you to be an inventor? What inspires you to be an inventor? What do you want to create? What is it that you want to do? Because you all have your own different dreams and desires, and we've all got our own whys. Why we do it, why we get out of bed, why do we want to come to the Inventors Association? Why do we join certain businesses? We want to create something and do something and make a difference. We want to find an answer to a question, an answer to something that's inspiring us on the inside. And I've realized years ago, my inspiration is to help people, help them be better in business, help them in their personal life, to create a better world so that we can all have, my business created a better opportunity for all the people in the sporting industry. They had an Australian product with a 5-year warranty that was designed and developed here in Australia for Australians. I created jobs. I spent thousands and thousands of dollars in R&D and developing the products all for a great outcome that's now giving me the opportunity for me to go follow my passion, which is to teach and to train, to mentor and to coach people so that I can help inspire them to become better at what they do and when they do it. One last thing I'll share with you before I wrap it up for this. What style of learner are you? And when I say that, there's three major styles: visual, auditory, and kinesthetic or tactile. So do you learn by seeing? So when you see something, do you then visualize it in your mind? When you read words on a page, do you see the letters in your mind? When you read a book, do you read the words sound out in your head? When I read a book, it meant nothing to me. It was dead boring. And it still is today. Reading is one of my challenges. I know that I gain so much information from it, but I don't enjoy reading. So I love Audible. My friend in my car, I don't listen to music. Everywhere I go, I've got a book. I'm listening to a book, and I listen to it a few times because I can actually absorb the information quicker through listening to it than I can when I'm reading a page, because my brain cannot function fast enough because I'm tactile. And when I was a kid, I'd sit there in school and I'd be tapping my feet, jigging my hair, spinning a pen through my hand, moving, doing this, doing that. And I'd get told, sit still, Wylie, sit still. But I didn't realize every time I sat still, I stopped processing. My brain slowed down. And so I wasn't functioning fast. I was just, I'd start going, slow down. And I'd get bored and I'd be sleepy, and I'm like, this is so boring. Can I go do something else? This is not what I like. But did I excel in tech studies? Yes. Did I excel in electronics? Yes. Did I excel in anything to do with physical activity, moving, drama, anything that was involved in anything tactile or kinesthetic? I was a whiz at it, building a motor car, fixing cars, motorbikes, everything tactile. I was all over it, electronics, anything doing. It was all doing for me. So understanding your learning style is a really, really good thing. To be able to know what kind of learner you are. Are you visual? Can you see those things? Do you close your eyes and you see pictures? Or is it that you kind of feel yourself doing that thing and creating that thing in your mind by physically doing it? Now, some people are a bit of both. Sometimes they're a bit of visual, a bit of tactile. Sometimes a bit of visual and audio. Not to say one's right or wrong. It's just, what is your style? What is it that how do you create your world? Is it through doing? Is it through hearing? Is it through seeing? Yes?
And sometimes it depends upon the information. Like if you can get information from hearing a story or reading a story, but when it's something that's very technical, you might not get the full gist of it by just hearing it. You need to bit of both, bit of all three.
That's right. And people need to integrate. That's one of the things that happens, is they need to integrate that information. And everyone integrates things differently depending on their learning style. So sometimes they need to, like if they're audio, they need to say it in their mind. They need to have that internal dialogue and say it back to themselves. Some people are visual, they need to almost write the words in their mind and see those words, or see that picture, or see that process, or that particular function, or that thing. Or if it's a tactile person like myself, I need to do it. I was told, Wylie, stop touching everything. You don't look with your fingers. It's like, yeah, well, back in the 80s and 70s, they didn't know that this tactile thing. And it was like, everything, I had to touch it, feel it, move it, open it, close it, pull it apart, put it back together again. That's how I learned. That was my learning style. So for me, that learning style, then that creativity, it then has now transpired into my business and into my life. And through that, I wish I had known this information back when I was in school, because they would have known what to do with me instead of telling me to sit still and shut up, back to that sort of thing. Yes.
A great example of the tactile learning is in the army, the soldiers dismantling and putting back together their rifle. They're not going to learn how to dismantle and put back together just by looking at it or hearing about it.
No, that's right. Yep. You've got to do muscle memory. Correct. That's right, Shane. Yes, muscle memory is very, very true. And we all have some sort of tactile learning. We all have some sort of visual learning. We also have some sort of auditory learning. We all have those in us. And some people are more enhanced in one area, or some people are very broad and have all three at a very similar level. So it's not right or wrong. It's just the style. And when you're doing your tasks at home or at work, in your personal life, in your professional life, start asking yourself, how am I learning this? What what am I getting? How am I getting this information in? What do I need to do? How do I understand myself? Because when I started understanding my learning style and I started putting together the disc profile, I started to see myself in a much, much brighter light, because I started realizing that, I had those skills, I had these abilities, and I have them for a reason. So now I can use them, and then I can pass them on to others. So hopefully you've enjoyed my chat tonight, and hopefully that's all well received. It's now been an hour. Hopefully I'm not running over time. So is there a bit of a Q&A? How does this work?
Yeah. Earlier you mentioned PTZ.
Pan, tilt, zoom?
Pan.
Pan, tilt, zoom. So for CCTV cameras, closed circuit TVs, you have pan and then tilt, and then it zooms in and out. So that's what they use now for high-level cameras, and with the megapixels that are available in the cameras nowadays, they can literally zoom in and out with digital zoom, but they also can zoom in and out with mechanical zoom. So that's the three. That's what that acronym stands for. Yes. Anybody else?
You mentioned Simon Sinek.
Simon Sinek. Yes.
Can you tell me how to spell that?
S-I-N-E-K.
S-I-N.
Thank you.
The model is called the golden circle.
Yep.
S-I-N-E-K.
Yes.
Golden circle.
The golden circle.
Yes. The golden circle, and it's on TED. Yep.
Just if I Google.
Yep. TED, TED.com. Yep. Look it up. The golden circle. Thank you, Sasha. And his model has been around for quite a long time now, and it's brilliant. It totally, the understanding that's helped so many people now understand why they do what they do. It's been great, because realistically we're all doing the how and the what for so long, and now it's a chance to know why you do it. And that why is particularly for inventors. If you know what your why is, then your invention is going to succeed. Because yes, that was my first Audible book that I ever read, and it was incredible. Yes, it really.
Sorry, the book is called Start With
Why?
He did a lot of research because he looked at leaders. Why do certain leaders, inspire us?
Yes.
So it's based on a lot of evidence-based research. So.
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah. Great.
So once you nail down why the other stuff follows.
Yes. Yep.
Wylie, I've got a question on your disc model piece.
Yes.
I'm just wondering, when you were studying and looking into that, understanding it, did you identify some famous people as examples in each of those sort of things?
Yeah, famous people, and I suppose I would use the couple of famous people, and also there's a range of people in different crafts and trades. So you really want your accountant to be task orientated and a bit of an introvert. He needs to spend some time on your books and making sure those numbers are very, very organized and very creative, and and they're straightforward, and we know exactly where they are. At the same time, you don't want an actor or an actress to be in that area, because they're just going to be boring, and that's no disrespect to any of the archetypes. The thing that you want is to look at this as being, how this sits with you. So a lot of your actresses and actors are up here in the extrovert category, but you still have a whole range of other people that in the actors and actresses who are in the area here as well. You Keanu Reeves and a whole range of other different people are in the introvert category, and they do fantastic. And so even though you are an introvert or an extrovert, it's not a positive or a negative. It's just who you are. It's just your style. It's the way that you interact. And the benefit is that you know who you are. You can know how you can integrate into the world. So from a famous person, Arnold Schwarzenegger is a D. He's bigger than life, Arnold Schwarzenegger, so he's crazy.
Elon Musk will be there too, surely.
Elon Musk is up here in the D and DI, because he is a little bit social, and he does get out there and schmooze and stuff. So you've got those people that are in that sort of area. So those kind of people up in that sort of zone. A lot of the times you find your doctors are more in the C and the S category. So your nurses, like my partner's a nurse, she's an S, SI. So she's introvert in some ways, because when she's doing all of her medications and all the data and all that sort of stuff, but at the same time she's very personable, easy to get along with, helps with the patients and her clients. So she works in nursing homes. She also works in private hospital. So she has to deal with people at different levels. Some people are slightly incapacitated. Some people are in there for a post-op situation. So she has the ability to integrate people between, in those sort of modes. So she's adaptable. She's a registered nurse. She's also a clinical nurse. she's able to do those sort of things and create. Yes, Eric.
Wylie, I know that DISC is an acronym. Is that
Yes.
right? So what do they stand for?
There's a range of different words that people use for these, and there's a couple of them. One's D for dominance, or director, decision maker, I for influencer, integrator, S for steady, stable, and C for conscientious, conservative. So there's a range. So different models use the different words, but the idea is to sort of they've changed over the years for a bit of political correctness. So there's been some changes over the years when it was originally created by Professor Marsden, but there's a range of organisations who you can jump online. You can do free profiling, you can do paid profiling. I used to profile all my employees with this method, and one of the things I found was when I started doing this, I started getting a better result from my staff. I also knew what their profile was and how I could help educate and integrate with them. And I had a couple of stories. One I'll share with you is that one of the guys came for an interview for an electronic technician, and I was looking for someone who could do the technical work, go out into the field and install the scoreboards, repair the scoreboards, but also build the scoreboards. He came in for his first interview. I had my production manager and myself there. He aced the interview, said, great, no worries. We'll get you back. Can you do this disc profile? When that comes back to us, we'll check you out. So emailed him the profile, came back the next day, looked it up, and it was like a DIID. And I'm like going, okay, that's interesting. Not really quite what I expected, but that's okay. And so we were looking for someone who's more CCS, because we want somebody who's more detail orientated, good with electronic componentry, a little bit of people skills to go out into the field and to integrate, answer some tech phone calls and do that sort of stuff. So I thought, all right, get him in for the interview, let's go to the second one. So we sit down, we have a chat, and said, I always send them their profile so they have a chance to read it before they come in for the interview, because I think it's a bit unfair that I sit here with all the information and go, yeah, look at me, I know everything about you, you know nothing. So I said, no, so I always throw them the profile, get them a chance to read it, and hopefully they do. And so he came in and we had a bit of a chat about the profile, and there's a bit of a brief on each one of all the four elements, and then it talks specifics about that person. They get a score, which is not a number score, but a profiling score. And so we went through those pros and the challenges, and by the end of it, I said to him, so what do you think of all this? And he said to me, this job's not right for me, is it? And I went, no. And he said, I need to go do something completely different, don't I? I said, yep. And he's like, how did you know? I said, well, you interviewed really well, you've got the people skills, but you need to be in sales and management. You're up here as a DIID. This is where you live. We want someone down here. And he goes, yeah, I know. You need somebody who's more, consistent and task orientated. And I said, yeah, exactly. So I actually bumped into somebody who knows him a couple of years later. He went off and did a completely different change in career. He's happy. He's making squillions of dollars and living the dream. So that was fantastic. It was the best $120 I spent. It was the professional version, so it cost me a little bit of money, but I paid for it. But I didn't get the wrong person in my team, which was very, very good. And he went off to live a better life. So, and then my other staff members who I've done the profiling, I've been able to know, because I know roughly what profile I'm looking for with the type of position that I'm offering. I'm then able to use that and go, okay, this is where it sits. This is what I need to do. And then sometimes people are a little bit more. Sometimes this model that I use has a dot. So the dot can be here, it can be over here, it can be right out on the edge, or it can be here. And I'll share another one with you. There was another gentleman who came in for electronic technician. He applied from overseas. He was in another country. He was an Australian citizen on his way back to Australia. And I was like, fair enough, that's cool. You're coming back in a couple of weeks. So we interviewed him, did really well. And he'd been in the Australian Defence Force. And I was like, okay, no worries. He's an electronic technician, really good, intelligent, thought this guy's got a really good chance. Spoke well. We had a great first interview with the production manager, and that was great. So I said, look, here's the disc profile. Go home, do it. We'll send it back to you. Come in. Everything's fine. So I get the profile back the next day, and the dot's right smack in the middle.
Wow.
And I was like, he's trying to out-psych the test. So each one of these questions that it asks you gives you 4 multiple choice question answers. So each time you get asked a certain range of questions, each time. So what it's trying to do is give you an orientation on where this person sits. Now, I've had people sit here, and I've had people sit there and there and there and there. Never smack damn bullseye in the middle, ever. And I've been doing this profile since I was 23 years of age. I'm 53, so I've done it for 30 years. I've done basic training in this. I'm just about to go do my advanced training in it and better teach and mentor and use this in workshops and trainings. And I was like, this is interesting. Got him in for the second interview, and yes, he did. He psyched the test. Pardon? He answered every question. He run the scenario round and round and round. He worked out. He'd psychoanalyze it because he's been in the military and he'd been through psychoanalysis, psychometric testing. He knew that if he answered all these questions and went around and around, he knew that he worked out that there were so many questions to be answered, and that each time. So he worked out that if he answered all those questions, he was trying to outsmart the test. Turns out he came and worked for us. He stayed with us for 6 months, and then he did a runner.
How did you find out that he signed the test? Did he taught him?
No, but we could tell by his personality, because he was playing mind games with all the staff. We knew. And my production manager and I, at the time, we started keeping an eye on him, and he was psyching out every single one of the staff.
Could be one of those sociopaths.
He was. And he basically, at 6 months, when he got his some sort of visa return thing signed off and finished off, he was gone. 6 months to the day. So you can out-psych the test, but the fact is that there's some science involved in this. And if you actually do the test with your best ability and answer the questions quickly and easily, you'll learn about yourself and your friends and your family, and it's an amazing process.
Beating the test is already indicated. If you're doing that, there's an indicator about the type of person.
Yes.
If you're trying to, outsmart, and it's the same psychometric.
Yes.
As a matter of fact, I sent one of those tests a few days ago. Member of Commonwealth Group. They're trying to get up on it. And I don't know that psyching the test is a bad thing. Basically, I sent it back not completed. Basically, I said most of the questions A, B, C, D, I sort of put none of the above, or sort of depending on what the situation was. So I think it doesn't like. Maybe I should tell you that over my nearly 60 years in the workforce, I've had 25 different occupations, right? So I don't sort of see myself as being introvert or extrovert or anything like that. I don't fit those categories.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that's a bad thing.
No, you can. Then you're most probably an omnivert. Omnivert.
That's a new one.
You're an omnivert.
That's not A, B, C, or D. That's
No.
an E or an F.
You're an omnivert. So if you don't recognize yourself as being an extrovert or an introvert, you're an omnivert. So your personality is most probably, in that case, running through the center line here. The question that I'd ask you then: are you people orientated or are you task orientated?
Well, again, like I can be people. I'd spend probably half my workforce in sales.
Yes.
Okay, so I'm okay with people.
Mm-hmm.
But then, I got my phone and I was, the first 10 years of my workforce, I was mechanical.
Yes.
It's okay. So, what's wrong with being both?
None whatsoever. So what happens is you can move in this profile. So when I first did the profile, when I first did this, I was a dot that was out here. And then as I progressed through my career, I moved up here, and then I moved across here, and then I moved up here, and then I moved. I've got multiple tests that I've done throughout my.
You need DOS as well.
No. What it is you're an adaptable person.
What's that?
You're an adaptable person. So you've adapted to your environment based on the situations that you've been put in front of you. So whether what career and or personal, you've managed to adapt. Some people don't ever change from one thing their entire life. But you, my friend, are a very fortunate individual who's been able to adapt and learn and grow and change with whatever circumstances have been put in front of you. So you've been able to be an introvert, you've been able to be an extrovert, you've been able to be task orientated, you've been able to be detail orientated. So your skill set that you've managed to accumulate in your lifetime is amazing. To be able to be a person that has those skills and those adaptabilities is wonderful.
Yeah, well, I just get a little bit pissed off when people want to put me in one of those categories because I think it's what you said is true. Like I'm happy to have that diversity.
Absolutely, and you're a rare individual because a lot of people don't deal well with diversity. They like to be in their certain set situations, and they like to be in one place.
Sorry to interrupt. Last question, and then
Shane had a question. You had a question, Shane?
I was going to ask about something more technical. Have you done much in machine learning and artificial intelligence?
A little bit, yes. Yes. So the way that I see a lot of that at the moment is that I'm not sure what the question where you want me to go with it or what you're asking.
Just basically new innovation into society and stuff like that. Everything's like biometrics and especially you get like card scanners and all that sort of stuff nowadays. So especially in China.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like video, CCTV footage.
Yep.
Can you blend that in with the question that I want to ask is the scoreboard technology that you've got for your business now, have you been able to adapt that into other areas?
There are companies that are doing adaptive AI technologies. We stayed away from the video watching and the screens and integration, but my career in biometrics and passive and active integration, security technology, facial recognition, I had a lot of experience in that area. Some of it's exciting and some of it's scary, in my personal opinion. And I think we're very lucky in this country that we live in a free country. I certainly would not want to live in particularly, I don't like mentioning names, but I certainly wouldn't want to live in some of those countries that have that sort of stuff because those worlds are going to be very different soon. And within the next 5 to 10 years, I think we're going to be struggling with those countries, and I certainly wouldn't be visiting them, that's for sure.
put your hands together for.
Thank you very much.
When Wylie arrived this morning, I did a bit of a sell job on him about Inventors Association of the kind of people that we have here, talking about Tony Rossiter and the Goldo and the invention of colour printing here. Told him about the lady that came in and talked about DNA. He's joined the rank of those people, wouldn't you? Would you agree? Yeah. As an Adelaide, so now I think the next person that comes here, I'm doing a sell job. I'm also going to be talking about Wylie as one of those Adelaideans and South Australians that have done amazing stuff. So thank you very much, Wylie.
Thank you.
We've got something for you, and it's also a photo op. So if you guys stand in front of your board, I want to capture that in there as well. I'll take a photo.
Well, we'd like to give you a certificate of appreciation
Thank you.
tonight, and also 12 months membership.
Thank you very much.
All right, look at me, shake hands. That's it. Look at the top of my head and big smiles. Brilliant. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thank you very much. Thank you all. I really appreciate your time. Thank you.